I love a good cup of coffee. You ever think what's holding the coffee? Do you ever think about clay? This is a beautiful piece of handmade pottery that was done by my friend Jade at Chatham Pottery in Cape Cod. And I was holding it the other day and I was thinking about how precious this is to me because it was handmade. And I got to thinking, how does something like this even come to be? Like most people, I have a vague idea. Okay, you have images of people at potting tables with a potter's wheel and they're spinning stuff, or maybe they're doing it by hand, building things. But where did the clay come from that actually they have to use to do this stuff? It's not made in a lab. I mean, some clay is, but most clay is dug out of the ground. It's mined. And I don't know, it's just very fascinating to me. It's like, how does that even happen? The Native Americans used to take clay right out of the earth and create pots and whatever they needed to use for it. And they figured out ways to fire it to a level that could actually use it, to hold water, to hold whatever they needed to hold, to cook in even. And so, I don't know, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be cool to go out in nature and actually find some clay, It's got to be around here somewhere. I remember as a kid, coming across clay in like stream beds and things like that, and I don't know, it would be really cool to like go out in nature and just find some wild clay, and see what we could do with it. Maybe we could create something with it. I think nature has so many gifts for us. It's not just the things we can eat, but the things we can create with. So I figured this show is going to be all about the wonders of clay, and we're going to go on a little expedition here and see if we can find some wild clay, and then take the next step and the next step after that, and see how far we can take this thing. So stay tuned for the wonders of clay. Welcome back to another great episode of Wildcrafting Wonders, and on this show we're going to go after wild clay. We're going to figure out where it is, how to dig it out of the ground, and what to do with it once you've found some. So I think the first step is I need to get a little perspective, do a little research here. I don't even know what clay is. I mean, it's not mud, because mud doesn't hold together when you bake it, not very well anyway. Something about clay makes it stick together when you're forming it and makes it turn hard and it keeps it from falling apart once you've raised it to certain temperatures in the kiln. Why does that work? What is that all about? My friend Peter out in Colorado is a potter, and he has actually done some experimenting with wild clay. Hey Peter, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Alejandro?
I am good. Did you manage to get all your mugs made?
Yes, I made 4. I made today. I made 3 yesterday, so I'm up to 7.
Fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me see how they're looking. Hold one up for me.
Well, this isn't a mug, but it's one of my. This is the. I mean, it basically is a mug without a handle.
Fantastic.
This is a Sager-fired jar from clay I found on my land, and it's got wire wrap and steel wool, which made a kind of and some copper carbonate. It did all kinds of funky things in the Sager. This is not how I generally fire things, but this is was like a workshop last year. So
that is gorgeous. I mean,
thanks. When I moved here about 5 years ago in Western Colorado, I didn't know that I had any clay on the land, and I actually wasn't throwing or working with pottery in any way at that time. And there's the way the agriculture in dry places, in particular in Western US, is, the snow melts and then it gathers in reservoirs and then is released over time into ditches, or like, in New Mexico, they call them acequias. And basically they're like little rivers that deliver water to all the different farms. And where I live here, it's actually known for the red clay earth that's not only in the ground, but is up further. In fact, the river that feeds this valley is called the Muddy, because it's always brown.
Okay.
And I have a pond in our property that when I moved here, the ditch water would go into it. It was a settling pond that would continue on, and it was totally filled. So I had somebody come and dig it all out And he said, where do you want me to put all this? And I said, oh, just make a pile there. And then one of my friend's kids was over and he was down on the banks of it. And he just like picked up, he was like, oh, it's like clay. And he started playing with it. And then I thought, and about at the same time, I was learning about throwing pottery. So I got some, turned it into, got the rocks and stuff out of it and started throwing with it. And it just was like the coolest thing ever. And to think that I could have clay that came from my land. Now, granted, the clay is being carried, all this distance through the ditches and then deposited on our land. But it is essentially the clay from this watershed.
Wow. So all that water from the watershed in the area that you're in just kind of comes down and brings its clay particles, and then they settle into that thing, and then you harvest them.
Yeah. And, there's other kinds of clay. There's stoneware, which makes more of a harder and more what they call vitrified product, which is like when you find it, like if you bought like, an oven safe thing at like Sur La Table or whatever, you'd find some stoneware. But earthenware is more like what is in like an orange terracotta planter that you get at like the gardener center.
Right.
And this particular type of clay, I read that there's two types of clays. One is like a thing called primary, which means like it's just been there and it's like in the ground like a seam. And then secondary, which has been carried by water. And that is often, or maybe always earthenware. And so this clay is secondary clay. It's been carried a distance and deposited, and then it can't be fired as hot. And so it doesn't make something quite as robust, but there's a lot of cool sculptural and functional things I can do with it.
So do you have to do anything with the clay to clean it up at all, or is it ready to go?
Yeah, well, what I do is I wait until it's dry. This pile is basically dry. So I shovel out chunks and put them in a big 5-gallon bucket. You fill up a 5-gallon bucket, like halfway up with water, and take these chunks of clay and either break them up with my hands or hand them with the hammer and then pour that dust in. And then in minutes, you have a slurry of clay plus whatever leaves and sticks. I pour that through a screen. And then what comes out of that is essentially clay and water. I let it settle, then pour off the extra water. And then that clay I pour into a cotton sheet and I place that inside a box with a screen on the bottom. And then the water leaks out, but the clay stays inside of the sheet. And then after 3 or 4 days, it's sort of malleable and rather than liquid. And I haul it up, throw it on a plaster cat mold for, I don't know, anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, and all the rest of the water comes out, and then I wedge it and turn it into a hunk of clay and I can throw with it.
I think it's really inspiring that you can just go out into the land and find this clay and refine it a little bit and actually create with it. So I'm ready to try it myself. I just want to find some clay in nature. I mean, it can't be that hard to find. So it looks like you can find clay along creeks maybe that's been laid down by, floods, or if you're lucky, you could find some primary clay that's been there for millions of years. Well, I'm not having very much luck finding any clay in my neighborhood so far, but like, where do we find the clay? Raphael told me once that he visited a clay deposit in Florida. So maybe that's the thing to do. Maybe we just need to pack this show up on the road and head to Florida. All right, the mission today is to try to we're going out to a place that we've heard of called Ocala Clay Pits, where there's a large deposit of clay that's like exposed to the open air. And the mission today is to try to find unique colors of the clay and separate them, keep them separated so we can have, try to refine them later on and see which ones are better clay. So we're heading on out there and see what we can find.
People that we've hired to come along and
dig. These are the diggers.
The navigator back there.
We have digging people.
You guys will be the shooter. I will be your driver today.
General area. Arrived in the area of the clay pits. We're just on a unpaved county road here. And we're going to go do a little quick exploration. See how the condition of things are.
Purplish and reddish and yellow clay.
Yeah. Perfect. Wow. Fantastic. You weren't kidding. This is
Yeah.
a lot of clay here. A lot of different colors of clay. So
Yep.
if we could isolate a
There's more
couple
over there too.
different colors, that'd be great. Like get some purple clay.
Yeah. Careful, those Those edges are very easy to.
It's like a little mini Grand Canyon here.
Right there to get the clay that we want, and there's clay right there on that side, right too.
All right.
I
I
see
like
it.
these little.
I see him, Clay. How do you get down there?
We're located right now pretty much in the center of the Ocala National Forest in Florida. We are exploring a sand and clay mine, and what is left are the empty, pretty much the empty walls with the best clay gone for the construction of roads and tennis courts. You still can see what the clay looks like in its natural state. Right here we have a wall of clay, and up in there we have an upper wall of or strata of sand. The division between the two of them was created 10,000 years ago when the rivers bringing water with clay silt from the north made all these huge deposits of clay right here in the center of the state. And then after that, the oceans went up and they deposited the sand that we see at the very top. And that sand has become basically what you will see when you walk through these hills, these ridges, which is really what they're called. So what we have right here specifically is clay in its natural form, as you can see right here. It can easily come out of the wall, the strata, and it comes in various colors depending on the minerals that are accumulated with it. Some of these minerals could be iron, which makes the clay red, and the other ones may be perhaps something that may have picked up along the way when the clay was brought down here by the rivers.
All right, looks like you found a little clay deposit here. And well, it's not hard to find one in this place, right?
In this place, pretty much because it is exposed by mining, we have the clay available right at the strata right there. And you can see that it's clay because of its color. It has the minerals embedded in it. This particular one right here, which I'm going to give you some, is blue-gray.
All right.
And you may have also, whoops, that's a nice piece right here. We're going to conserve and process when we get home. Let's get some more. The more the better.
Yeah.
Okay, we're processing this at home, not here, of course.
So we're gonna want to get rid of the silt part of the clay.
Yes.
And just leave the clay.
The clay alone. Exactly.
And that is done by refining it, filtering it, till all we have is clay.
Precisely.
First we got to get the clay.
We have the clay embedded with some sand, which will have to be separated from it. But mostly this is pure clay right here. I can feel the moisture on the clay as I pull away from the wall. So when it rains, it gets in between the clay and the wall, and creates.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Having a tool really helps.
A good tool would be even better.
Yeah, your hands are nice, but you know, the thing is that in order to get enough clay to later process, you have to fill up your buckets.
A word of caution, we're working right against this clay cliff. It's just clay, it's not rock, so it could, you know, you got to be careful and not disturb too much of it, or you know, you might cause a little cave-in on yourself.
Okay.
So I think that looks pretty good. That's
good enough.
not going any farther.
You can see how it is extracted.
So we got this, it's very dry. If you didn't know this was a clay pit, you might not even know what you were finding. So if you find clay that's already wet, you know, give it a little squeeze and see if it still sticks together, you know, and if it does, it's probably clay and not just mud.
Precisely.
All right, let's go see. This is a nice purpley clay. Let's see if we can find some other kind of colors of clay here that we can experiment with.
Excellent.
What are we finding over here?
Okay.
It's like a mini Cappadocia, Alex. It's like,
Whoa.
Every one of these things has a tiny little pebble on the top, like this. It's like a capstone. When it rains, when there is a pebble, the water will erode all the clay out of it from around it and leave these tiny little towers, these little structures. Here is what makes these very peculiar little structures, which are miniature little geological formations. Each of these little pebbles brought in here by rivers, when they were deposited and they stay on the surface of the clay, then they created a capstone. When it rains, the rain does not dissolve the capstone, but it dissolves the clay all around it, creating these little miniature Cappadocian structures, which is something that is in greater sizes up in Greece and Turkey.
Are you saying this is like a miniature, fast-forwarded version of what they're doing, what the processes were in Turkey?
Exactly, very much so. It's the same geological process. A capstone covering clay, the rain dissolving the clay around it and leaving the capstone, except the capstones over there are much larger stones, and therefore they are able to protect more clay than it is right here. You can actually see what also happens in the American Southwest, where you have all these canyon lands.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea. Sandstone and clay is protected by capstones, and then the rest of it is eroded. As a matter of fact, the Grand Canyon, to some degree, is the same principle, except that there is a running river right through the middle of it, as well as rain for erosion.
See the ripples of it.
Yeah, this looks like some really high-grade clay.
Yeah, you could scoop some there if you wanted.
Yeah, I see it's kind of come down. And this is actually still moist.
Yeah.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
Hold it together. And
All these chunks right here.
this is what I mean. If you take you wonder if you have clay or not, you just take a clump of it like this and squeeze it together. And it should hold together, should hold its shape somewhat. And then you know it's probably got a good high amount of clay in it. But if it doesn't hold its shape, then you just have essentially just dirt. Fill it up.
How much do you want?
I'm gonna fill the bag. This stuff is interesting. It's like we got these cracks and things. This kind of clay is like kind of clay that expands when water gets into it, and then it contracts as the water starts to leave, wearing these cracks.
It's really wet. Just trying to get in here and try to sample it with my finger or something. Ooh, that does feel clay-like. Yeah.
Got some red clay here, Ollie.
Yeah, this feels more like clay to me. It's really mushy in here, so I wouldn't come in here unless you plan on taking off your shoes, bro.
Oh man, this is some really fine.
Yeah. This is, when you feel it, it feels like clay.
Right.
It doesn't feel sandy. Like over here, this part, Alex, where it's really wet.
So it's
and
about
maybe
quality.
yours, if you constituted it, it would turn into that.
It might. It's supposed to. It should.
Right.
So yeah, it forms a nice ball of clay. It's so easy.
Grab at this real quick, just put on the
I
bottom.
mean, that's when you know you got the stuff. This still is going to have sand in it and silt we got to get rid of before you can actually make. I'll show you when we get home. You never know. You could hit quicksand and get stuck.
Chile along the coast.
It's a hot day here in Florida, in the Ocala National Forest. And that's why you got to be careful when you're exploring places like this. You never want to go on your own, and you want to be careful where you step, because especially on clay pits like this, you know, it looks all cool and interesting, but you one wrong step and you're like up to your knees in muck, and it's clay, so it's super sticky. It wants to hold on to you. And so if you were by yourself out here, you know, with no water and nobody knew where you were, it could be tragic pretty quickly. So I mean, this is a very remote place. Nobody would find you if you were here. So be very careful when you're out there exploring for clay in your neighborhoods or other places.
So that means that there was no more.
What are you saying about the top?
The layers of sand at the top, the yellow ones, are perfectly stratified over the horizon, evenly from left to right.
Yeah.
But the ones at the bottom with the clays are tilted down. So that was a different geological process that made it tilt down when this area was lifted from the ocean. Don't forget that the Ocala Forest is actually part of the Ocala Ridge, and the ridge was lifted from the ocean millions of years ago. And then, of course, the sand, which is what you see at the top, was deposited during the last glaciation 10,000 years ago.
Like if this was a scale on the wall here, and you were saying at the bottom was this period of time, and at the top is now, how far down would you be digging to where humans aren't on the earth? Are you like,
I would say
are you a
probably,
foot down, or are
you see
you
the
10 feet
darker,
down? Yeah.
darker, almost brown sand?
Yeah.
We were
Near
above
the top?
that.
Yeah, we're above that.
Above that.
Wow. That's kind of
Way above that. This is all, by the way, sedimentary material. Everything you see right here was sedimented, was laid down by water.
Yeah.
So at the very top, you can see the sediments created by the ocean. At the one where they have the colors is sediment created by rivers flowing through this area from Georgia down south.
Carrying it down here.
Exactly.
Erica has made it to the top of the quarry. Clearly someone has blazed a trail up there with some kind of all-terrain vehicle or something, and he's followed it to the top.
Okay. Eric, you got that other bag of clay? Okay, cool.
We're here at Juniper Springs and just checking out the old spring sites down there. There's eels in this spring among the eel grass, and I saw one about this long. So I can't remember if they're supposed to be dangerous or they're not dangerous, but you're not supposed to grab them or anything. Anyway, we're just gonna see if we can find some clay here in this spring.
And that dark area right there is the actual cave. The cave from which all this water flows from, the Florida aquifer. There's a rock that you can hang on to and look down into the abyss. Right there. Here's a quick panorama of the spring swimming area. Built also by Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s.
Yeah, I think I found the clay. Oh, yeah. Where was it, Eric? Right underneath. Sure it's not mud? Is it just... Well, I don't know. It's so wet. It's impossible to tell. It feels sticky. If it feels sticky, it's possibly clay. Yeah. All right, I'm going to transport this to shore. All right. Get a sample back. Take out a bigger sample. Oh, that's a big old sample. How does it feel clay-like? It feels runny. I don't know. I like it a lot. All right.
Show me what you found.
Well, could be clay. Sticky.
Looks like, yeah, definitely some kind of silty clay that you got for the bottom.
It's
Yes.
sticky, so.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the next day and we've got our clay refinery set up. It's really simple. Don't be intimidated by any of this stuff. You just need buckets and something else to settle the clay in. So we're going to start out on just a quick overview. We're going to take our clay and we're going to put it through this screen mesh and kind of get it all dissolved and get all the rocks and sticks out. And then we're going to settle it in this container and then we're going to finally filter it one last time over here. So let's get right to it. I'll start with the first bag of clay. And this is the partially wet clay, moist clay let's call it, that we pull from the hillside. And it's got a lot of rocks and things in it. So we're going to just probably have to do it a little bit at a time. Get it on top of there. It's a little bit of a messy business, so that's why you should definitely do this outside. And it's kind of gross too. Oh look, here's a big rock. Toss that aside. I think that's a fossil, I don't know. Just toss that over there. All right, so get yourself a hose and just don't get crazy. Just kind of get it broken up and moving through the filter. Break it up with your hands. You got big rocks. I can already feel the sand that's staying behind in the screen. Yeah, it's gonna get messy. All right, so now I've gotten all that clay washed through the screen, and if you look at it, look at all this, like, all this gravel and sand that it caught. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get rid of all this. This is what makes your clay, you know, rough and not smooth. So now that that's done, we can open this up carefully. Watch out. And get rid of this stuff. We'll wash that out in a minute. Okay, so now we got a nice bucket of sand and clay. I mean, mostly clay, not so much sand. And we're gonna pour it into the settling container. That's what I'm looking at a mess. already. You can do this in a single step like this, or you can repeat this process a couple of times and get even more of the sand out. And then we wait. And it should take about maybe 20 minutes for the heaviest stuff to settle out. And then we will pour off the top stuff. And then we will take the next step then. So now we've got some stratification of layers here. I don't know if you can see in the very bottom here, you've got still heavy silts and some sand, and then a layer of suspended clay particles, and then a layer of actually clear water on the top of it. You've got to be, whoa! You gotta do it slow. It's good to have some help, especially at the end when you're getting down to the dregs. You don't want to get every last drop. You want to stop it at some point before you start getting the heavy stuff. So now we got all this thick stuff. You think, oh, there's the clay, but no. Some of this is clay, but most of this is silt. It kind of feels scratchy a little bit. Doesn't feel smooth. It's gritty when you put it in your finger. It should be totally smooth.
Yeah.
It should feel just like soft and smooth. While that settles some more, we're going to process another bag of clay, and this clay is completely dry. This is it looks just like dirt, okay? It doesn't have any moisture. It's completely bone dry. So when you have this kind of clay, you want to make sure that the big chunks are as broken up as you can. Some people like to throw this in a bucket with a paint mixer and just whip it around until it's totally powdery. You know, it's fine. You don't have to go that far. Just got to break up all the big lumps. And we're going to use this larger bin here to do our first pass, just so we can have more room to work. All right, just gonna pour us all out on here. Whoa, fine stuff went through already. Okay, now we got it on here. Before I even put any water on it, I can just make sure it's broken up. Make sure the big pieces, if I come across any actual rocks like that, just toss it. And when I got all the big pieces kind of broken up, then I can wet it down and do the rest. All right, take the hose out. So in this case, we're doing a kind of a combined step. We're doing a first pass sifting combined with settling at the same time. So we're just gonna wet it all down. And just keep working it. It smells weird. You never know what kind of organic matter's in these things, so definitely wash your hands when you're done. Actually, I think that's the water out here. We have a shallow well out here, so it's got a little sulfur in it. All right, and now actually, it's already coming back to life as to just like that, just with a little bit, add water. It's already come back to life as clay. So it goes from bone dry clay, to workable clay, just by adding the water to it. And the thing about it is that's because it hasn't undergone any chemical changes that make it into a solid clay. At this point, it's just any clay that dries out, you can bring it back to a workable shape just by grinding it up into powder again and wetting it down. As long as you haven't fired it yet, it will always turn back to clay, no matter how dry it gets, so don't throw it away. All right, we have successfully, this is very high grade clay because there's very little sand mixed into it, only a little bit of gravel, very tiny bit. Mostly it's just pure clay. This is stuff that Eric and I got from the wall of the canyon there, the pit. And we've successfully gotten all the big pieces out. So take that off here. I can feel the silt, the grittiness in there. So that's why you've got to give it that second pass. It needs to be poured off and allowed to settle and then poured off into another container. You can't do it all in one step. You wouldn't want to take this and just let it settle because that's going to not be very good clay. It's going to have a lot of silt particles and a little bit even of very fine sand. So we need to pour this off into another settling bucket. all this stuff is not going to be usable because it's not clay, it's silt and sand. You just got to remember, you're going to get a lot less than what you started with, and so that's why you got to collect a good amount to begin with. Try not to shake it up too much. Leave the silt behind. It's the next day, and we are going to now take the clay that has settled in all these buckets and take it out and put it on cloths, and that way we can squeeze the last of the water out of it over another day. So we're going to just basically pour off whatever remaining water there is in the buckets carefully, and then we'll load it onto the cloth like this. I've got this one bucket. This is the, I believe this was the totally wet clay, and it still has about a 1/4 inch, maybe an inch of water still remaining. I'm just going to slowly tilt this and just pour off the remaining water without losing too much clay. You're going to lose a little clay, but that's all right. Again, you lose a little clay in every part of the process, so you got to have a lot of stuff to start with. So now we just need to load up the clay into these cloths. You can use t-shirts, anything that'll work, where it's fairly dense cotton type of material. And I'm just going to load this whole cloth up with clay using this scoop. You can try pouring it in. There's really no rules about this. I'm just gonna scoop this all down in here and pour it into this. There's not very much in this one, in this sample. Try to get as much as I can out of this one. Take one of your rubber bands and you just kind of grab the corners here, grab all the corners, make a little pouch like this. Just try to get it all so that nothing can leak out of it. It's gonna be, you're not gonna want to wear nice clothes for this, that's for sure. Okay, and I'm just gonna squeeze out. It's got a leak in it. That's interesting. I'm just gonna put a rubber band over the top of this, like that. Maybe double it over a little. Try not to break it. All right, great. All right, and there we have it. That's our first clay bag, and it will you need to set this somewhere and allow it just to continue to drip. And over the next 24 hours, the water will slowly leak out of it, and you'll be left with just the more firm clay that you can actually work with. And notice if you look at the bottom of each bag that's hanging, the water that's coming out is clear. It's not clay colored. The clay is being left behind, and the water is being slowly extracted by gravity, and it'll just leave a denser and denser ball of clay until it reaches the point where it will be workable. Basically, the rule of thumb is when the water stops dripping, when you no longer see drops of water coming out the bottom, it's time to check it. If it may be ready at that point, or it may need another full day. All right, so open up your clay bags here, and then they're going to be different colors and different levels of, and what I want to do is just scraping.
Are we blending it into one big ball and then making something? Or,
we could.
Or, I mean, you don't seem like you have much, that's all.
I don't have much.
And I have a lot.
You're going to want to, scrape it up, don't leave any on the outsides here. Kind of get it scraped into a ball.
Can I put it on the paper to
Sure.
work it?
Yeah, you can.
Dry it a little bit?
It'll dry a little on the paper.
Yeah, it's kind of leaving it behind.
Here's.
Okay, let's watch it.
I got a little ball of clay. You're gonna want to make a ball of clay.
Borrow your
Get
stick?
the air out of it. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to get the air out of it. Once you've made it into, start with a ball.
Well, if anybody's short, you got a lot here.
Yeah, if anybody needs
I think
any.
you should stick with the colors.
All right.
I love yours, Mark.
Let's
You
not.
want to trade?
Marcus has a purpley clay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep them separate.
Yeah, because I mean they'll fire a different color.
Yeah.
If we blend them all together, it'll be homogeneous, and that will kind of like it won't show the regions.
Right. But you want to make your clay. If your mom is yours too wet, you can use this one. That's hardly a better one. If
Can I put flour on my hands?
I like mine.
Okay, great. Mom's is a
But I
little.
still have stuff in it. So
What do you mean, stuff in it?
I need to scrape it.
Needs to scrape it.
Oh, okay. Look at that. Check that clay out. I mean, we made that from raw clay in the ground, and we refined it. And now we've got this fantastic stuff to work with.
I'm going to use my towel on the other side to see if I can
So,
dry it a little
dry
bit
it a little more? Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't, when it hits the paper, it just seems to leave it behind.
right. All this clay is at different levels of dryness because it's like different kinds of material in each one. This one probably has more iron. I don't know what's making that one purple, but it's cool.
It's a purple haze clay is what this is.
So what you're going to want to do is make sure that whatever you make, you don't have to use the whole ball, or you can if you want to.
Whole ball of wax?
You can make a pot out of it. You can make a
you can?
character. You could make.
Well, I don't want to be greedy. I mean,
Yeah,
actually
go
got a
for
lot
it.
more than I thought you were going to have.
I know. Well, I took the
Oh, okay.
popped in and decided not to do it.
Okay, fine.
I made a meatball.
Hey, it's a spicy meatball.
You're going for like a 1/4 of an inch thick walls, or to an eighth, an eighth of an inch. You know, that's pretty thin. But 1/4 of an inch is probably fine. But you want them to be as even. If you made a pot, you'd want to make the walls even.
Well, you're talking about firing, and we're doing a raku type fire.
Right.
So to dry these out, get the moisture out of it, what's the parameters of that?
Just the thinner the walls are
But
without
they'll
it
crack
collapsing.
if they're too thin.
Right.
Nice weather for making
It's good clay making weather.
Yeah.
You know what that looks like? From here, it looks like a crown.
It does, or a water splash or something.
It's like a chocolate cake cat.
So now we have our finished pieces. We've set them out to dry, and they'll take a couple of days to lose most of their water, and they will shrink a little bit. It's firing day, and that means the clay is successfully dried in the oven. We had it in the oven at 200 degrees for like a couple hours. Wasn't it?
Yeah, I think 2 hours is what we did, and then you said something about the pilot light.
Yeah, then we turned it off, let it cool. Don't take them out of the oven because it could crack if it has a big temperature shift. Just leave them in the oven, let it cool down naturally, and the pilot light in this gas oven just kept it warm and dry all night long. You know, we live in a humid place here, so it was good to just keep them out of the humidity because that clay is hygroscopic. It will pull in moisture, so especially now that it's bone dry. So we're gonna keep it dry until it's time to fire, which is today. Today we're gonna get the fire pit kind of set up to protect the pieces. And I've decided to try a little experiment. Now, everyone uses different things to do their pit firing, but I thought to myself, what stays super hot for a really long time, will get the pieces up to temperature. And we found out there was a bag of charcoal in the garage, and I thought, let's use this. We'll pile up charcoal all around the pieces, and it'll keep them stable while they're getting hot, and then it'll be just a nice bed to support them in while they're cooking for the time that we're doing this.
I'm hoping nothing breaks is my big worry. So
Yeah, there's a good chance something will break.
there's delicate things in there, and all it takes is something to fall on it before it's hardened.
It's firing day at last. We've got our pottery made. We've got it heating by the fire right here. You don't want to just put it right in. You want to get it next to the fire so it can come up to temperature. And then using tongs, we'll carefully put it into the coals when we're ready. But right now we're just building a nice hot roaring fire and getting everything up to temperature. And then we'll make a little room in the middle. And that's when the magic will happen. So we're gonna have to tend this fire for a couple of hours, and then it'll burn on its own, you know, into the evening. And then tomorrow morning, we'll see, we'll break away the coals and see what we have. Hopefully nothing explodes or shatters, and we'll have some very interesting proof of concept pottery pieces to see how this can be done from the beginning, finding the clay in the wild, to actually usable clay objects. All right, so Marks and I are going to keep tending this fire until it's ready to put the pots in. So what do you think? I think the fire is up to.
I think we're moving along. I mean, it's burning. It's staying at a certain temperature while everything starts to break down.
Okay.
I just don't want to split it up too fast, because then it might go out.
Right.
You know. So I mean, we're doing really well. So maybe you let it go a little bit longer to where we have a better, more substantial embers base.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of start to spread it out and create your space for the pieces. It's just if you try to go too soon, we may not have it may go out, is my fear.
All right.
So, and then we're like, we got them down in there, and we're losing heat, and then what do? We have to pluck everything back out.
Right. Well, at that point we get the charcoal going in there to keep it going.
Yeah.
All right, we'll give it a few more and see.
Yeah, I think if these could break down a little bit more, I'd be happy.
All right.
You know, it's moving along perfectly. It's just, you know, I know we want to get the show on the road, but
well, you know, nothing.
There's a lot of uncooked material in there.
Right.
So.
I think if there's one thing we've learned about this process is you can't be in a hurry. This takes days. This takes, you know, it's been like almost solid week since we started this, maybe longer.
Yeah.
Since when we went out to the clay pit and to actually
had to get to pieces, you know. Now we're like at the firing stage. We've come this far, you know, so we kind of have to pace ourselves.
Okay, got it.
So make yourself a cocktail, whatever you need.
All right.
I don't know.
Cocktails, sounds good.
There you go.
Cocktail.
My mom's just blew up in a million pieces. Mine is shattered on one side.
Oh, the carnage.
The turtle's holding together, the cat's holding together.
Humidity.
For now, that cat's probably going to blow apart. It's probably too much water.
Okay, we've lost one. We've lost one completely. Mom's was just blew up.
Shattered.
My pot, the little pot in the back there, it just cracked one side.
But that might make it more interesting.
Interesting. We want him to last.
It's holding up, and the cat is so far holding up.
All right. The turtle is disintegrating slowly.
Okay. Like when you have a kiln, you don't just flip the kiln on full blast. They bring it up to temperature over a period of hours.
Alex is in the thick of that.
Oh, that's right.
Well, wait a minute. The moment you put that thing within a matter of 5 minutes, it explodes.
Right.
Crack.
Yeah.
So, is that because it's too cold or because it's too hot?
It's because the piece was heated up too quickly for the gases inside to escape. And so I would try to do it slower. I would probably, maybe I would build a ring of charcoal and put the pieces in the middle and just let them, get hot that way. And then I would move things in once I was sure that they weren't going to blow up. And, I don't know. I'm got to experiment. I'm going to have to build a fire ring to be able to test it, my theory. So.
Now you know what not to do, right?
Okay, it's been an hour and a half. Sun's gone down, and the pieces are stabilized in the fire. The ones that have survived seem to be doing okay. And we put the charcoal in, and everything's pretty red hot in there. So now we're at the point where we can actually add some organic matter to give it some color, and then we'll put the lid on. Okay, so now it's like 6:15, and it's been about 2.25 hours, and we've had the, basically our revision of this technique is to use charcoal to mound around everything to keep that heat just pouring into the pieces. We're not sure if we need to do the oxygen deprivation thing, but we're going to go ahead and do it because that's what you're supposed to do. What do you think works?
I think that you're right about the not letting it burn too fast and too hot, and maybe by doing this technique of covering it, it'll slow it down and it'll burn longer. We threw a couple of big thick logs in there, and hopefully those are enough to keep it going for, you know, several hours at a decent temperature, and we don't end up putting it out with the cover, but we'll see.
Come on, Ollie.
You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Ollie, come on.
I guess it's kind of anticlimactic, but okay.
I don't know. I mean, do you think we should cover it completely, or
There's a little spark coming through the middle of it.
maybe we should cover it completely so it's safer?
Yeah.
Wow, it's already hot.
Lock it in.
Yeah, because we're going to get air from the sides.
Yeah.
I just hope no cats try to jump up on there.
I have not either.
My eyes. Oh, it's coming out.
Oh, you okay?
Yeah.
All right. Party's officially over.
I mean, I don't know what's going on in there. Oh, I forgot to put leaves on it. Think I should do that part?
You sure? Lift your side up and throw some leaves in there.
All right, just for fun. Okay, it's morning and our fire has burned out. Feels a little warm still. I'm gonna have to be careful and maybe still use tongs because it could still be some hot coals in there. So we're gonna open this up and see how we did. Our first experimental firing of this pottery. All right, well, it's really burned down. Let me get
It burned to the ground.
Let me get the tongs out. First, we'll see if we have the little cat sculpture. Oh, look, he survived.
The cat survived.
Yes, Marcus's beautiful little cat sculpture seems to be intact.
Oh, smoking.
Here it is. Ta-da. So, and he looks pretty solid. I think he actually.
Yeah, it has a
We'll put him right there.
bit of color. Different color.
Now, yes, he's changed. His color has changed. He's got some interesting markings on him. Yeah, he looks good. It'll be interesting to see how solid he is once we. Now we're going to try to find what else is still in here. And we'll see if I can find my my little cup. I think I found it. Oh no. I think it broke. Oh yeah. It didn't make it.
Pieces, I think.
It's in two pieces. But the point of this thing is not necessarily to have like perfect art or whatever, but it's actually to see if the process worked. If we actually got, you know, we were able to make these things turn into pottery. So I'm going to take all the pieces
Well,
out.
can you put it together by gluing it?
Probably.
I think I would. You're lucky you can find anything else.
Let's see if your piece turned out well.
No, mine is just all over the place. Oh, but your mother maybe.
I'm not finding anything.
You want me to bring a broom or something?
Wait. There's a piece.
Yeah,
I still hot. Look at that. You see that?
yeah.
I still on fire. Oh my God.
I think that's actually a piece of the bottom of this.
Of yours, yeah.
Yeah. But here's some pieces of the turtle.
Oh,
That's the tail, I think.
Oh my goodness. It's like an archaeological.
It's like an archaeological dig, yeah.
Yeah, finding the pieces from the past. That is so fascinating. But look at that, how cute he is.
I know.
Oh, he's gonna be blown away.
Marcus will be very pleased because his piece survived very nicely. Some really interesting results here. So you can see the interesting colors on this thing. And that's what the point of this kind of pottery also is that you're going to get all kinds of interesting colors. If had this survived, it would be very interesting, you know, very beautiful to look at. But it does encourage me actually to be, you know, try again and maybe take a little more time to let the clay fully dry, and maybe. But even if you do everything right, there's still a very good chance you're going to lose a piece or two. That's just the nature of this kind of pottery. As you can see, the kind of a bit of a carnage here. You know, we have exploded pieces, but then we have the triumphant sculpture of Cat by Marcus R. Torres. It survived very nicely with some very interesting coloration imparted to it by the fire. So I think that is a success. I'll take it.
What's your conclusion about this whole thing?
You know, I mean, I would say even though we have broken pottery and one successful piece, I definitely think we proved that it works. Yeah. You know, you can actually get clay out of the ground in nature. You can clean it up, refine it, make it into a usable
utensil or an instrument.
Sure, or something creative, like, you know, a piece of art, yeah. And fire it, and it will actually become pottery. I mean, this thing is solid. You cannot, you know, turn this back into clay again. You couldn't break this up and add water and it would be clay. It's no longer clay. It's now pottery. It's now ceramic. Yes. So, and I love the colors that are on this thing. And that's what the whole pit firing thing gives you. That's different than regular just putting it in a kiln. You get all these interesting textures and colors. The more things are in contact with it, the more coloring you get. Yeah. Marcus's piece here, he only got a little bit of coloring down in here. Imagine if he had dared to pile up stuff around it, and you know, he would have gotten even more interesting coloring. Even as it is, though, it is very interesting.
Yeah, so it's a cat with black legs.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The rest of it is unrecognizable, unfortunately. But this is it. This was supposed to be the tail of the turtle. Oh well.
Well, what's your conclusion after doing this?
Well, I need to learn more about how to cure it before it's fired. Mm-hmm. And apparently, the more time that it's spent in the sun, the safer it is to fire it. Also, and I really don't know whether there are other factors involved, like where do you put it into the fire, close to a burning log or away from it. Probably best thing to do is to create two pieces alike, and put one right next to the logs where they're burning, and then another one maybe a few inches away.
Oh yeah, some test pieces.
Just to see which one evolves into a good piece of ceramic without breaking up. So.
Right.
Anyway,
I agree.
Yours looks like something that was dug out of an Indian burial mound.
It does. It looks like if you're ever going to need to make artifacts for a movie or something, we could...
you can do that.
Totally use this tech. Well, that's the show for now. I hope you liked it. And if you did, like and subscribe, please, so we can do more of these cool shows. And if you think of anything I can test out or explore or experiment with in nature, send it my way. Put it in the comments below and I'll try it out. All right? See you next time on Wildcrafting Wonders. Get out there and try stuff. But do it carefully and do your research.